Greetings. This is part 2 of my perspective on being a single parent. So I'm going to do it in 2 parts. I'm going to start with talking about the things that I found most challenging, and then, should my phone memory allow, I will then go on to talk about the things that have helped me. So in my last video, I may have touched on some of the things that I talk about on this video. It's been a while since I made that once, and I've slept since then. So yeah, might repeat myself a little bit. However, I just want to start off by saying there's a lot of things I wanted to talk about on these videos, but I just listened to my friend's new podcast who she's interviewing or having a conversation with another friend of mine. So go and listen to that, because that is a really well-rounded overview of not specifically, but largely surrounding the things that I wanted to talk about regarding neurodiversity and parenthood. So go and watch that. The podcast is called Nosis, Nosis. There's no shame in struggle. I think it's available on most platforms. I was listening on Spotify, but great conversation there, very eye-opening, very enlightening, and very well articulated as well by both of the women speaking. So yeah, I guess I'll start off with the things that I found most difficult being a single parent, in no particular order. And the first one would have to be quite a broad one, because there's so many things kind of link into it. Is building community. And I have always been a bit of a, I love spending time on my own, still do, and I've always kind of done my own thing, really, traveled on my own and just been really happy just spending time just doing me, and seeing people when I see people. And I've never even thought of the necessity for community until having a child. So yeah, then trying to build that community in a place like Manchester, I've come to the point now where I don't know if it's possible. I have conversations all the time about community, wanting to build community. How can we do that? But the reality is that we've all adapted to what we have, and the system squeezes us so much to the point where no matter how much you want to build community and have people kind of like in your life like that day to day, it's not set up for that. We live in our little concrete boxes for the most part, like a drive away from each other, and the day to day we're just kind of trying to maintain and get what we have to get done around the house, and then outside of that we're trying to rest, trying to engage in self-care practices or spend time with our family. So yeah, I've kind of accepted that it's not possible here. I'm still open to being proved wrong. And I'm making the most of what I have. I'm grateful that I really love just spending time on my own, or just me and my daughter. We have a really great time, but not having anybody there day to day, for example, when I am doing bedtime, sometimes that can take like an hour and a half on the really challenging nights. Like last night, for example, was one of those nights. She was exhausted, and she was like, "Mommy, I want to go to bed. I want to go to bed." So I was like, "Okay, let me just finish eating, then we'll go to bed." Usually, I'll try and get the dishes done before putting her to bed. But last night she was just like, "Mom, I'm tired. I want to go to bed." So I was like, "Okay, let's go to bed," thinking it's going to be like a quick, easy 5-minute bedtime. and I can get up and do the tidying and the cleaning. But then time went on and she was just kind of like wriggling and not really going to sleep. And I ended up having to just get up. I was like, look, I can't lay here in this dark room. Even though I had a podcast on or audio book or something, I was just feeling so like, I couldn't relax. And, she picks up on that, babies pick up on however we're feeling. And I think that's even more prevalent when it's a single parent household, because your connection is so strong, like you're the only influence on those feelings, and mirror neurons are heavily at play up until, I don't know, I don't know the facts on that, but yeah, certainly where she is now, age 2, almost 3. So when I know I've got things to do after she goes to bed, I can't fully relax. So then I have to try and get everything done before, which then, means she goes to bed a lot later than, what she should be going to bed, the time that she should be going to bed. So it's stuff like that, like having nobody else there to take care of stuff while you're, doing bedtime, doing bathroom, just generally attending to baby and playing with baby is really difficult. And it feels very unfair on the child, because they shouldn't have to be playing on their own or going to entertain themselves or end up sitting in front of the TV for hours while you get anything done. Like, there should be somebody else there. And it breeds a lot of, for me anyway, kind of resentment and guilt. Because like firstborn children of single parents often have to grow up a lot quicker than they would do if they had both parents there, and somebody else to play with when the parents are busy. And then trying to build community following trauma and with neurodiversity, neurodivergence. It's a lot to go into in the intricacies of how that plays out, but it's extra difficult to build that trust and be able to ask and receive, and kind of keep your attachment in check when you're trying to build community. For me, I've noticed just a cycle where I'm happy and I'm content with how things are, and I'm like, okay, let me just be self-sufficient. Like, I am self-sufficient. Have always been. So yeah, I start off the cycle and okay, I'm comfortable like this, it's fine. But then, the next stage of the cycle is like, okay, well, I don't want, it's not all the way good for the child not really having any other connections, like other adult connections, other connections with children. And community is important. Like, I want that to be her foundation. I don't want her to normalize it just being, always been living quite a solitary, isolated life. Because that was my foundation. And yeah, it's just a cycle that I want to break. So now I'll kind of like start putting myself out there again, like responding to messages, sending messages, trying to organize meets. And then maybe something doesn't go in a way that I envision it going, or, if, for example, a message doesn't get responded to, or, a plan gets made and people don't turn up, or there's like inconsistencies somewhere. Or, someone who, anyway, something will happen that kind of like triggers, abandonment, or makes me feel let down in one way or another, and it starts this like cycle of thinking of like, oh yeah, no, this person doesn't care, this person doesn't really want to build community, and I take it really personally. That's kind of like my wounded self kind of coming out automatically, and it takes a lot of like mental power to kind of tone myself down and remember it's like, no, it's not. I'll take things personally. I can also be very critical of people and their behavior and actions. And, although a lot of people's behavior and actions are pretty shit and it's frustrating when it's inconsistent, I recognize that the issue is the systems, not the people that are the problem. You know, I'm like, okay, everyone's just doing what they can do to survive. And then it starts that cycle again of, okay, let me just do what I need to do to survive and maintain, which is just cracking on and getting on with it. So it's just a loop that goes around like that. And I guess I don't even know if I can call it a loop, because it's all kind of happening all at once, all together. And I feel like it's a lot of work to break that cycle without any tangible evidence that it can be any different. So yeah, building community, I think, is one of the most difficult ones, and so many other things kind of like stemming from that. Making new friends, I guess mental health. They're all very much interlinked, these things. So I've kind of struggled with anxiety and depression for most of my life. Most of my life, I'd say. I remember when I was maybe like 8, something like that, and I would not be able to sleep at night. And my mum used to have to give me a rescue remedy, which is like if you don't know, like a homeopathic remedy for like anxiety and stuff. Because I was just up at night thinking, like worrying about the house setting on fire. And remember one time there was like an outing, like a family outing with like, you know, some of my mum's friends and their kids to Bolton Abbey, and my brother went down this raft, like this, what's it called? The river, what are they called? Down a river anyway, basically, and it had rocks and stuff. And he went down it. Like, he was fine. But then for weeks afterwards, I was like, oh my God, what if the river just carried him away and he just never came back? So that was when I was really young. As I said, maybe like 8 years old, something like that, maybe a bit younger. But when I had a child, the intrusive thoughts went on a madness, like any little thing that I was doing. And I think it's especially prevalent when you are living on your own with your child. You know, like, and when no one's kind of checking for you day to day, like everything's terrifying. Even just like, you know, the fact that SAD, sudden adult death syndrome, exists. You know, like, what if I just suddenly collapsed? What if, you know, I injured myself? What if anything happened and my front door is locked and no one's checking for me? Like, and I'm really bad at responding to my messages, so it wouldn't really be a cause for concern for people to not hear from me for weeks, you know? I guess the good thing is having her grandparents on her dad's side, where we see each other. Well, she stays there once a week, but, you know, there are weeks like last week and this week when she's not there. You know, so things become a bit more like, I've become a bit more panicked in those times, like extra cautious. But every is less so now. But when she was really young, you know, every thing that I did, like cross the road, just day-to-day thing, I'll even even still, this is one that is pretty consistent, pulling up to junctions in the car, I just get like these flashing images of like the worst possible collision happening, or the worst possible thing happening at any moment. And now, like before, when I was more kind of dysregulated and sleep deprived, I'd have that full body like reaction, like my whole body just going into like not shock, like my whole nervous system firing up every time one of these thoughts came in. They came in a lot. They come in a lot less now, but still pretty consistently. It's much quicker, much more fleeting, and I can catch it before my nervous system goes into response, as if it's actually happening. When she was really young, you know, everyone was trying to touch her and stuff, and I was like, became a bit of a germaphobe. But then having that, I guess, germophobia, OCD or whatever, on top of ADHD, autism, a bit of OCD, but it was impossible for me. It still is impossible for me to keep on top of the things that I needed to do to kind of like make me feel like I was in a clean environment. And it resulted in me just feeling like I had to be really hostile around people, because, you know, you show a little bit of, you know, friendliness and openness, and then they go into touch it. Like one person I was at a street party when she was probably about 6 months old, 7 months old. Younger than that, like 5 months old. And it was a drunk guy with a cigarette in his hand, and he went to go touch. And I'm like, what are you doing? How do you think that's okay? So that was really challenging, more so when she was younger. I mean, now she's older and she can talk, and, you know, I've got a landline, and I'm trying to teach her, you know, how to dial the emergency number if anything happens. But also, like, she is strong, and I've got a fire door, so even if I leave it unlocked, I think she'd be able to kind of start pulling it open, or just like bang and shout really loudly and get help. So the stuff around the house, I'm less kind of it's less scary being at home, which is great, because, you know, my home is a sanctuary, and I can kind of enjoy that more rather than kind of being scared about, you know, things happening all the time. Yeah, anxiety got really bad. You know, and there's postnatal depression is a thing, but it's like, I don't even know how to kind of say what I'm trying to say here, but it's like, after you give birth, your body goes through so much, you know, the hormonal crash, the fact that you had this life in you and now it's outside of you, and like your whole world is tipped upside down. So if you don't have the support, of course, it's going to have massive mental impacts, emotional impacts, spiritual impacts. So I'm like, I question the term postnatal depression. I think it's completely natural. Rather than it being like, you know, this like diagnosed, like, oh, she's got postnatal and brush it off. It's like, oh, it'll pass. It's like, no, like, how can we support new parents, especially new unsupported parents? And rather than putting them in this box, it's like, okay, this is completely natural, you know, it's just something that needs to be integrated, because there's a massive grief that comes with having a child, like a grief for, you know, your past self, you know, the person you used to be. There's the grief for whatever circumstances that it was, unless it was by choice, that has landed you as a single parent. There's often, you know, something traumatic that's happened, or, you know, heartbreaking, that you're also having to process when you're getting no sleep. Your body's going through this massive recovery, and you can't actually do what you need to do to recover, like your self-care stuff, because you've got a child to tend to, you know. Like, I am very militant with my self-care. Like, I have to be. If I don't, like, it's just not good for anybody. So, you know, now she started having sleepovers or whatever, really, when I started leaving her with her grandma when she was probably about 3 months old, and taking a few hours for myself. You know, I make sure I go to a yoga class or go to the sauna, ideally both. But the sauna's been like the one constant. I'm lucky to have a really cheap gym membership at a really good facility-wise gym, where I have the sauna, the steam room, really good equipment, loads of classes. So yeah, I utilize that ideally on a weekly basis. And those weeks when I can't, I feel it. I really feel it, because your body's under such stress, mostly maladaptive stress. But the sauna kind of puts you in a state of adaptive stress, you know, and it's the heat. The heat is good for us and great for our circulation, and it just kind of helps to balance out the maladaptive stress with the adaptive stress. Same goes for exercise. You know, adaptive stress helps you get do the things that need to be done, whereas the maladaptive stress that comes from like sleep deprivation or unprocessed trauma, it's just depleting us. but yeah, like that's my priority outside of my parenting duties. My priority is resting. It is doing as much as I can to fill up my cup, and I'm gonna go into the specific things that I do after this video. I'm probably going to have to do it on a part 2 because I've been talking for 20 minutes already and I've only got 7 minutes of recording time left, even though I just cleared out my phone anyway. But then as a single parent, like, it's very hard to stay on top of that. And as soon as you stay on top of doing it, like it's always going to come at a sacrifice the time to spend with your child, sacrifice to doing what you need to do around the house, and things get knocked back. And the same goes for when I guess I'll move on to the next point. One of the most difficult things about being a single parent is just not really feeling like I have the energy for play. I think, and this is also linked to neurodivergence. I'm the more kind of inattentive style of ADHD or ADD. So like quite unfocused. Occasionally I will get hyper focused and be very restless, or be very restless, but it's mostly inattentiveness. But thankfully, neuroplasticity is a thing. So, I know that I can retrain my brain, and when I'm on it with my meditation, like, it makes a huge difference. What was I saying? Yeah, energy for playing and time for playing. Like, I can maybe play with her, just like, focus play for like, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 minutes tops. And then either like my brain will start shutting down and I feel like I need to like do something else, or like the thoughts of all the other things that I have to do come in and take over. So I can play with her for very short segments of time, which I feel is really sad. And then if I really I'm like, okay, I'm carving out half an hour just for playing with you, the whole routine gets knocked off. So like, she'll eat later, she'll get to bed late, and if you got it, when you're dealing with a toddler, it's not just, you can't just like, oh right, okay, that's fine. It gets really difficult to get anything done. To get them in the bath, everything's a tantrum. Everything's a challenge when you actually start that bedtime routine, or if you need to put them down to do the dishes, or something that you need your hands, it becomes very challenging. And it just such massive implications of carving out time for yourself or for your child outside of the day-to-day. And that's really frustrating. And one of the most infuriating and upsetting things about being a single parent, it's like, no one should have to do that. It's not a way to live for you or the child. Like, it taking so much work just to play with each other. What we're doing? Probably got time for one more point. So I found it really difficult. Talk about a menstrual cycle here. When my daughter was, I think, about 16, 18 months old, well, from when she was about 9 months old, I started feeling the symptoms of like PMS. Like I was getting cramps, and I really was noticing like shifts in my mood. And I thought my bleeds were going to start. And as well, like the kind of generalized or standardized kind of NHS guidance say from about 9 months, that's when your periods are probably going to start again. So I was feeling all these symptoms, and I just wasn't bleeding. And they got more and more strong as time progressed. And I was trying to do some research into like what's actually going on. Like, am I ovulating? Like, what, am I fertile? Like, I just didn't know. Oh, that's not the audio being all the way down there. Am I fertile? yeah, I thought it was really weird having all these symptoms, and preparing, and planning around where I kind of thought that I was in my cycle, and then the bleed not coming. So not actually having any kind of like confirmation about where I'm up to, and trying to look into that. I found there's just very little information out there on what's going on with your body when you're breastfeeding. So I decided to use herbs to call in my bleed. What did I use? Loads of emmenagogues, mugwort, motherwort, raspberry leaf, chamomile, orange peel. I'll try link the podcast that I found all this information on, if I remember. So yeah, since then, my bleed came about, I don't know, a few days after having a medicinal dose of this tea, or multiple medicinal doses of this tea. And since then, things have been fine. But then, anybody who has menstruated before know that, it can be really, really challenging on some of those days, like when your hormones are going up and down. And even now, because I'm still breastfeeding, like the expected hormonal changes and the behaviors associated can be like reversed sometimes. I haven't got time to elaborate on that more. But yeah, really hard to find information on, when you breastfeed and the impact that has on your body and your hormones. Like, it's kind of still a guessing game, less so because I'm bleeding and I know more about, other things to look out for, to know where I'm in my cycle and know when I am fertile and when I'm not. Yeah, but I'll try and link that information. I am going to stop this video now, and there will be a part 3 now incoming.